I love you.
Yes.
And I
That's a
love
good way to
those
lead.
listening. Love it. Love is in the air.
Welcome. How you doing, Anthony? Long time no see, bro. Everything
Yeah.
all right?
Good, man. Long time, as in many days.
Many days,
Passed
yeah.
since our
feels a
our
while.
last meeting. In person, I mean, it's been a minute, but we see each other online, meetings, podcasts, pretty often, so it's cool. And as usual, excited to have a new and interesting guest with us. Meeting for the first time today, so we're going to kind of learn about Kevin from Shoemaker Levee as we go through the... Did I say that wrong? As we go through this
No, it's
conversation.
perfect. I couldn't have said it better myself.
Okay. Well, maybe you could have. What you can tell us. So me and Dee talk a lot about branding as musicians, as artists, as businesses. We've actually rebranded recently one of our businesses, this podcast, and just trying to really understand the relationship between names, content, and what appeals to people. Because obviously, I mean, there's so much going on online and in the world. It's tough to cut through. So as I said, the name of your band, your group, I know that there's a cool story behind it. So if you don't mind, can we start there?
Yeah, for sure. So I was reading a book called The Bible Code. Now, I know that's some eyebrows get raised. But it essentially it was talking about deciphering how there's a code that predicts certain happenstance throughout the course of human history. And that it was able to predict the JFK assassination and certain other aspects. And now, be that as it may, it was just for interest sake of reading this material.
Sure.
One of the things that they had called out was the largest celestial event ever to be recorded in human history, which was the collision of the Shoemaker Levee comet with Jupiter.
Right.
And what was interesting to me about that particular event, I'd never heard of it before reading this book, so I was doing some research, and just the fact that even one of the fragments would have completely annihilated the entire human race had things been a little different, and had the comet, one of the fragments had happened to hit Earth.
Wow.
Right.
And it got me thinking about fragility of the human condition and just how we put so much stock in a lot of things that we probably shouldn't need to. We busy ourselves with minutia where, there's a larger picture at hand, and it just kind of, the wheels were turning and turning and turning. So I've been working with another chap on a musical project at the time. And I said, well, this seems to be a fitting name to sort of frame it. And so that's kind of how it got its inception. And it's just kind of carried forward as a package for our musical project, even up to now.
That's a cool story if I've ever heard one.
Really cool. Yeah,
Deep, actually,
very deep. And
What
we
a
could
story,
go on
man.
about the we waste so much time in our lives doing stuff that's really unnecessary, energy that we could be spending doing really meaningful stuff. When did you decide that I'm not going to waste any more time, and this band needs to form and we need to start recording? Do you remember that exact moment in your life where you made that decision?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. I mean, throughout the course of everyone's life, you meet with different things that sort of set things off the rails, and so we had our experience with several of those things. My brother passed away in 2006 from cancer, and then my dad passed away, and then my mom passed away, and my stepmom passed away. I mean, it was like the whole series of things that happened, as well as with the other members of the group. So every band has their story of things went on hiatus, and this happened, that happened. But throughout the course of there's a 20-year period. Like, we cut our first album in, I can't believe I'm saying this, but it was in 2000, and then 2002 we were doing touring and stuff like that.
Nice.
Anyway, and then things took a break, and so it was really only in about 2017 that we started working as this unit. So myself and the bass player Matt had been playing together for years. The guitar player in the band, Dave, I've known him since I was 16. We've been buds for a long time, but he officially joined the band, I think, in 2016. And then we got Dwayne, the drummer. He came on board in 2016, 2017. So since that time, we've been really sort of focusing on making a go of the material that had been written over this entire period of time, and bringing it to fruition. So So far, we've released 2 records, which are kind of a cross-section of the material that's been written over all this time, and then some new material that we've written as a 4-piece.
Got you. Very cool.
So our third record, which we're currently recording at Orange Lounge in Toronto, is more leaning towards what we've created as a 4-piece, like this current unit, rather than the material that we've sort of been bringing out over the, that's been written over the past 20 years. But what's interesting to us anyway is that some of that older material still holds true because of what's great about lyrics, and it's kind of the thing that you don't want to be asked is, what's this song about? Because a song can mean something to Anthony, mean something to Dee, mean something to me.
Sure. Right. Yes.
It is in that moment, in that current time.
Gotcha.
The same thing as trying to get someone to listen to a song when you're driving somewhere and maybe something auto plays and you're like, oh my God, it hit me just at the right, vein. Yeah. And you try to play it to somebody else and they're like, yeah, that's all right.
Yeah, it's not
no, you
don't feel it. Yeah.
You don't understand.
Yeah.
Right. So it's kind of that's the thing where, someone asks you what the song's about, and it's difficult to articulate that without sounding trite.
Right.
Is there really,
That's a fact,
so anyway, our writing style is more so, we try to keep things relatively open, but I mean, ultimately it's about life.
Yeah.
Not to sound too platitudinous, but it's like, it's about life. It's about what we go through as, getting older and, having exchanges that are meaningful and, and in some cases there are anchors, lines that are tethered to something specific, but I mean, at the end of the day, it's what you make of it, right?
Very true.
That's a great answer, actually. And I know you said it's almost like vague saying it's about life, but I think based on, for anyone who's listening and for us during this conversation, the way you started off explaining like sort of the name of the band that you came up with, and I mean the profoundness of that, how you tied it all together to the fragility of life. I think by you saying now it's about life, we have a better understanding of what that means to you and what that means to us. So I think it's pretty clear what you're saying there, and I love it. Can we stay on the writing process here? And I know I beat D to one of his favorite questions to ask songwriters, but can you talk us through this now? Because is this going to be a collaborative, especially now, so with your 4-piece, is this like a collaborative effort where everyone's chiming in, or are there certain members that do the writing? I might throw a bunch at you at once if you don't mind. Is it
that's
typical where you're writing lyrics and then putting music to it, or is it just depending on the inspiration? Let's talk us through your process.
Yeah, so I will answer by not trying to sound again too vague, but it is different per song, if that makes sense, because in some cases I will approach the band with something that I wrote, and there will be a format to it. There'll be the structure, chord structure, lyrics, etc.
Yeah.
Okay.
But what I've realized is working with these other 3 guys, there's a reason why we click, and it's because they'll call me on stuff, right? And they'll basically just shed light on things like, well, you don't want to, what are you saying here? You've already said it, so there's no point. You can cut it down by half and whatever.
Right.
And and also, by the way, I was working on this part a couple weeks ago, and it didn't have a home, and so how about we do, we could tack that on and see what it feels like. So there is that. And then there's, in some cases, like with our song The Tap, that was written on our first record, Dave had written the riff. He had been sitting on it for literally 15 to 20 years. I can't even remember what the stat was now, but and I had just written a couple of days prior lyrics, and I just happened to fall into this story about Blue Triton and Nestle owning the water in Elora and Ontario, blah blah blah. So it just to kind of fit with the riff, and it was one of those things where it was like we walked into the rehearsal space and walked out within an hour, and the song was done. Nice. And that's like, you pinch yourself in moments like that, because that's like never happens. But it was a pretty smooth process. So that happens too. But in terms of like, I think there's a few aspects to your question there that I'm trying to remember now. But
the process overall,
I mean, it varies. So most of the time, Dave and I are the ones putting the lyrics together.
Gotcha.
And it's been an adjustment for me too, because for a long time it was just I was writing the lyrics. But since Dave's been on board, he and I work collaboratively on that, which I find really interesting and helpful. And we both had to, take some steps back in terms of the, kill your darlings. Like you have to be willing to work with somebody and be called on, what, that's not working. And be okay with that.
Mm-hmm.
It's like having an editor right at the ready. As a solo person doing that, it's tough to keep the forest from the trees. You know what I mean? And stand behind it when in fact it could be improved upon with the input from somebody else.
Yeah.
So it's kind of a collection of all those things. And Matt, bass player, he'll bring a riff. We can build on it. We work in different ways.
Yeah.
That makes sense. No, it definitely makes sense, and I can kind of understand the challenge of being a solo songwriter to now trying to be collaborative, because when you write lyrics, it's personal and it's your work. You might take it a little slight if someone, challenges a lyric or challenges the way you compose something, but
sure,
that's something I think everybody needs to at least be able to do, is to kind of just allow other people to collaborate and share their criticisms or their ideas on your own song.
Mm-hmm.
Now, after you've made all this great music and you guys have a bunch of albums, how do you guys, I've always been curious, so I usually ask a lot of people this question, but how do you guys go about sequencing the album? Now, like the order of the tracks on an actual album after you have a bunch of songs. Is there a process? Do you guys just kind of like decide, or does someone else come in and kind of decide on the sequencing?
Well, yeah, and something that I want to touch on is that through trial and error, we've realized that a democracy is far easier for so many different reasons, in terms of the split for the writing, in terms of the split for the, such as they are, royalties for the material being released and streamed, etc. So same thing applies when it comes to something like the arrangement of the songs, the sequencing of the songs on an LP.
Gotcha.
Okay. We'll put it out there, and so we've got a WhatsApp group, and so it's our wives always say, like, "Oh, you're talking to your girlfriends again," because we're just constantly typing away on these things. But for example, for our upcoming record, which is this isn't officially released yet, but it's going to be called Between the Lines, is there is a sequence that we have ironed through that best represent kind of the emotional flow that we want to see. And so, I put it out there. Matt tempered it, Dave tempered it, Dwayne tempered it with like, well, what happens if the listener gets to this point and, we haven't yet introduced this aspect? Because there's, in our tunes, there's varying styles. Like, I know that sounds obviously like everybody says that, but we try to span different emotional states, I guess. Some softer stuff, some harder stuff, whatever. And to us, it's a journey. So we want to put that forward in the LP sequence as best as we can.
Right.
Even though present day this is the first time we're going to be releasing singles. Our first two records were like full LP.
Right.
And it's a new thing for us because we're kind of old school.
Mm-hmm.
Like, we all of us will sit down and listen to an album, because in our opinion, that's how the artist wanted it to come across. It's a statement,
right?
Because a song is as a standalone is important, but
for sure,
as part of a greater work, the amount of energy and you guys know, like how much emotion and energy and blood and sweat and all sorts of other bodily fluids that go into the process sort of don't get considered when you're hearing those things without the context of the rest of the material. So our process, I guess, is very democratic in terms of, okay, I think the flow should be this, and then another one will weigh in and say, well, you didn't consider, right?
Well, that's great. That's deep. Again, your answers are all just thought-provoking in that sense. I mean, we're still used to singles coming out, and people, there's a lot of albums where you've heard the single and you haven't heard any more, and then 10, 15 years later, you're like, oh yeah, I heard this. It feels like it's a new song or whatever. it's not considered as a body of work, which makes a lot of sense. And especially, I'm glad that you explained it for people, even people who are listening who aren't musicians, artists or creators in that sense, just understanding how much goes into this work as a body of work. Not necessarily trying to put out a single there just to smash the charts and make some money, but this is a reflection of
Yeah,
your
I mean,
work,
you know,
right?
if that's your no, for sure. Sorry to cut you off there, Anthony.
No,
I mean,
go ahead. No.
if that's your thing, no problem. Like
Right,
that's
yeah.
that there is no problem with that whatsoever. You're lean into it, right?
Fair,
And if you're
fair,
able
yeah.
to do it, then hats off, because it is
Yeah,
a
yeah.
tough racket.
Yeah,
But-
that's fair.
You know, I think what's great about the current state is that say what you will about the internet and whatever, it allows us the freedom to be able to get some exposure, even if that's just your own camp. And that's really what we're dealing with is a camp of people that think that we're all right.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
we're cool with that. You know, like
Yeah,
even my
yeah.
cousin is like, dude, I don't get your stuff. Okay, I will not listen to it. Oh yeah, and that's fine.
That's
Yeah,
fine.
yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
I'm totally fine with that.
Yep.
You know, I would far rather have a tight group of people say, you know what, I listen to your stuff and it incites emotion, and you know, I'll put a couple of your tunes on every now and again because it means something to me.
Right.
And that is like the penultimate. It doesn't
Right,
matter
right.
if that's
Yeah.
15 people. Like we'll play to one person in a room.
Right,
And
right.
you know, because it's like if that person has an emotional, if it resonates,
Yep.
fabulous.
Yeah.
You know,
Job
Amen.
done.
I
Yeah.
agree.
life's too short for the other stuff anyway, right? And we're not in it for
Right.
the cash, obviously.
It's a byproduct in this case,
Right,
right?
yeah.
That's
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
it would be fantastic if that were the case, but I mean, let's be realistic, right?
Yeah.
You know, and plus we're getting on in years, and it's just like it's a labor of love.
love. Yeah. That's how we
It's
started
gotta
off the
be.
podcast.
Yeah.
Love.
That's right. Everything's
Right.
cyclical, right?
Yeah,
Mhm.
yeah. And I mean, I feel like we're playing a little game of table tennis here because you keep setting up the next question that I was thinking as you were speaking anyway.
Sweet.
So, yeah. So here goes. You're like, what?
I was like,
That was
well, it took me a sec to
That was me
understand what
playing
you were
table
doing
tennis.
there.
Yeah,
I
that
got
was-
it. I got it.
Whatever, it's fine. I'll cut that out myself. It's fine.
Yeah, well, I put my paddle down. Hold on a second.
Yeah. So you mentioned just the like technology, social media, the internet. I think you said specifically, and that does play a role. That plays a big role in whatever we're doing now with content, music, putting stuff out there, putting ourselves out there. But also in music creation, for a lot of us, that plays a big role too. So I just wanted to ask you to touch on what aspects of technology you use in music creation.
In creation.
Yeah, and actually, if it comes into play in the live shows, I'd love to know about that too as well.
Yeah, I mean, in terms of
question.
technology, we're kind of old school.
Okay.
You know, and our records reflect the emulation of the live performance.
Okay.
We had a writer from Spill
Magazine.
Magazine come to one of our shows in Toronto and say, I was out trying to find parking and I heard you guys playing a couple of songs and I thought it was the CD was playing inside the club.
Wow.
And we
High
loved hearing that.
compliment. Yeah.
Huge compliment for us,
Yep,
big
yep,
time, because we want the live show to emulate, but like we don't want it to seem overproduced.
Okay,
Sure,
right.
there's some liberties that you like to take in the studio,
Right.
but you know, our sound doesn't really lend itself to. I like to joke about bringing in like the Gregorian chanting and like having you know, all these different aspects to it that could flavor the production of the song.
Yeah.
However, you know, ultimately we want to convey the same style and vibe that we have with the record that we do live.
Got it.
So in terms of technology, I mean, Dave is actually the other three guys in the band are gearhead. I'm terrible with this stuff. Like
Okay, fair
I
enough.
play a guitar. I know it's a Fender Stratocaster. I could
That's all you
probably
gotta know.
tell you. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
But
yeah.
I'm not really in that realm.
Okay. Okay. That's
Dave helps me out a lot when it comes to connecting the dots, when it comes to gear, and he's up on all of those things. So, I mean, we
Okay.
have standard gear that we use as a rock band, to be honest.
Yeah.
You know, but in terms of technology, one thing that we're kind of veering into now is in our rehearsal space, we're using a Scarlett 1820,
Okay.
which
nice.
enables us to have, you know, isolated tracks to kick onto laptop and listen back, but that's more sort of for the pre-production.
Just for the listen back. Okay.
Yeah.
Got
So that
you.
we can call attention to different things and say, like, there's nuances to this part that we might want to map, and like let's see if we can join up on this riff and those types of things, right?
Useful.
Yeah.
But in terms of that playing into our live show, we haven't really incorporated much of that.
Okay.
If that is your question,
Yeah,
I don't
so I
know
guess you're
if-
playing everything live is. Right,
Yeah, because I think honestly, like, I don't know if you guys sense the same thing, but I think there's a resurgence of demand for the authenticity of people who can play instruments and who are like the live
we've talked
aspect,
about
because I
this.
think everybody's generally getting a little tired
Absolutely.
of the mass-produced, perfect sounding,
Right. Yeah.
No bad note,
Right.
no off, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And now with the proliferation of AI, it's become all the more apparent that I think people are going to be desperate for authenticity.
Yeah.
Wholeheartedly agree. Wholeheartedly.
1,000%.
And not knocking, you know what I mean?
Yeah,
Like, I'm not,
of course.
anybody
Yeah,
who
yeah.
wants to get into that category,
Power
that's
to
fine,
them,
because
yeah.
there's a whole space. I think ultimately these tools are meant to augment the human experience and creativity rather than replace.
Replace it. Yeah.
Mm.
And then we
Yeah,
need to
yeah.
like take a step back and say, like, okay, we're looking at this the wrong way if we're got our heads in the sand and we're saying, like, this is going to replace our jobs. It ain't. It's not. It's like when the internet emerged,
Glad you said that. Yeah.
everyone was freaked, right?
Right.
Because it's like, this is going to, or you could the record player as opposed to live concerts. I mean, technology adapts. Humans also adapt.
Yes.
Right?
True. Amen. Yeah.
But I don't think it sets aside the importance for, us clarifying the importance of sitting in front of somebody and taking an immersive experience of them expressing themselves with a musical instrument.
Wholeheartedly.
can't be
I've been
beat.
preaching
Can't
this
be
for
beat.
weeks on our podcast, just that we shouldn't be
So
scared.
true.
If anything, live music, I feel, is going to be a more valuable commodity, and people are going to be willing to pay a premium to enjoy that human experience. Because I don't care what you tell me, I really would have a hard time believing AI can replicate that minute when Kevin gives us a face melter on stage and I'm there, experiencing that, up front. That there's nothing else like live music to me personally. So I don't think AI will ever get to that point. And I think live music is only going to become more valuable as a result.
Yeah, I agree with you guys. I mean, I'd be silly to say that we didn't adopt technology in our right, because it's not us up there standing with acoustic guitars with no microphones, no amplifiers,
Of course,
nothing,
yes,
right?
Right. Yeah.
So we deal with the
exactly.
technology of the time, but at the same on the same token, it's not. We don't have something standing in for us.
Right.
Yeah. And that is definitely something that's bigger in music these days. We've talked about this, and we've had some different companies on who are the providers of like multi-tracks for live performance, and that's a whole another thing. But I'm glad to hear that you guys you're a 4-piece and you're playing as a 4-piece and you're making music that's authentic to you, that you can. I'm
sorry. Something just occurred to me that I should probably mention. Now this is something that will probably cause some dissension or consternation, whatever, friction.
Nervous, man. Okay, let's hear it.
Our drummer manufactured an acoustic kit, but it's a digital kit. So essentially, it runs off triggers. It looks like an acoustic kit, and it plays like an acoustic kit, but it's digital. And there's varied reasons for why we decided to go that route. Now, in terms of that plays into your question about technology. That's probably That's probably one of the areas that differentiates us a little bit in terms of because by all rights, and when we actually use the Roland digital kit on the first 2 records, and it's on this one as well.
Nice.
And you can't really tell. I know. The drummers are going to jump all over my case and be like, I know some that are going to be like,
It's the analog digital battle all over again.
Yeah. But there are a lot of benefits to going that route as well.
For sure.
Huge benefits. I mean, if nothing else, we just played a gig in Peterborough where the stage volume was astronomical, and it didn't need to be. Like, the drummer the kit was so live that it just destroyed everything else, and the front of house couldn't keep up.
Right.
It's not the drummer's fault. right? It's just it's the way the configuration happened. But if we had been able to bring our kit,
Right.
the front of house engineer has the ability. She can just like, work with the faders and just isolate things appropriately. And it's just like, it's so much easier.
Yep.
Right.
So that's a decision that we made. It's very technology based.
Yes.
But still, it's an acoustic performance by all rights.
Yeah, no, I'm glad you jumped in with that, and that there's something to be said about that too. And this is an example of using the technology as a tool, not as a crutch. So I highly respect that decision. That's cool.
Nice.
Very cool.
Absolutely. I had a quick question. Sorry, just based on the average musician's life, there's so much going on. I did hear you talk about a wife and I think kids, if I'm correct, but there's just so much going on in your life. How do you balance your personal life with trying to not only create an album, but do these shows and probably, work a 9 to 5?
And the
That's a
admin
good
that
question.
goes with it too, right?
Sorry, I missed that.
I said, and the admin that goes behind the scenes,
Right,
and all that stuff. Yeah, it's a lot.
Here's a couple things.
Yes, please.
The time doesn't make itself.
Right.
As an individual, as a musician, as an artist, as you well know, running a podcast takes a hell of a lot of time for editing and putting yourselves out there into the concepts and setting up the interviews, blah, blah, blah.
Stuff, yeah.
Right.
You have to make the time. You have to, because otherwise life will just stomp all over you, right? Life's what happens when you're busy making other plans. So unless you assign the time to dedicate to it, it's not going to move anywhere. So that has to be first and foremost. You need to set that time up, and in some cases you're going to have to have very conscientious and wonderful people in your world that are willing to make accommodations for you to move stuff around to make that a reality.
Yes,
speaking mainly of our wives, our lovely supporters, and our families. The other point I wanted to make is just the reality of musicians, whether you're solo or whether you're in a band, having to be business people.
Right.
Because you have to set the pace for understanding how to market the product, how to market the brand, how to position, yourselves on social media. But you're doing all the promotion, doing all the advertising, you're manufacturing the product.
It's a lot.
And you're in the QA group, you're in the PR group, you're wearing all of the hats.
All the hats. Yeah.
Right.
Sure.
So
everything officer. That's the
Yeah, but I think ultimately, take a step back and think about how well-rounded that makes you as an individual, like how that helps out your daily routine and how that positions you as a person and to operate on your daily basis, right? You just have a keen understanding of the creative aspects, a keen understanding of the admin aspects, and ultimately, if you're not letting it, bowl you over too much, it can be really advantageous to different facets in your life to be able to balance those things. So
true. Very true.
I think it probably skirted your question a little bit, but I think
I think you nailed it.
We're ultimately all these days having to balance, you could argue, far too much. Just with the fact that, these things, our phones are way too accessible, and that you have, the direct route to notifications flying at you from 17 different platforms. And where did I get, case in point is, where did I get the invite for this particular podcast? It took me about 15 minutes to look back through, like, so which profile was it? Was it my work profile? That type of stuff.
Right. Yeah.
But at the end of the day, what really drives it is passion and love. Right?
Love.
You have to love what you do for it to make sense, because Lord knows at this point, for any independent musician, you're in it because you're fixated on the greater purpose. Like the currency of having someone enjoy your music and being fulfilled by that.
Yes,
it is. I think it speaks a lot louder than how much cash you make. Because and also the perspective of, like, we all have day jobs, right?
Yeah.
But what represents, that line between the year you're born and the year that you pass, that line on your tombstone,
right?
Like what makes up what's in that space?
Yeah.
And is that going to be what you do at your day gig? Like, if you look at it as the means to an end, I'm making money so that I can provide for my family, but then ultimately feed the things that bring me fulfillment, and that obviously, you know, by result, lift other people up in the world, cause that sort of ripple in the ocean that spreads out. And you know, and I think that's really, if you're fixated on those things, it makes the time investment, brings it home. Like, it makes a lot more sense.
Of course,
You look at it less as an invasion on your time.
Yep.
And so I'm not saying it's easy, because it ain't. It's really tough.
A little different.
Right? Some days you might want to throw in the towel, because it's like, damn, I can't even get my laundry done, much less. You know what I mean?
Write a song. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
It's
but
so true.
but I think all those things together, you know, it has to create a more meaningful experience for yourself and for everybody around you. And I think that's really what we're focused on.
Yeah,
well, I was actually going to
well
ask you to share earlier in the conversation some lessons that you've learned along the way, but I think that right there is a big one that people can really take in and maybe rewind just to play it again, because those are powerful words and thoughts, especially how you mentioned the currency of what we're doing. That applies to everything, right? Not just music, whatever you're doing, there's a price that you're paying to be able to do it, whether you're doing the right thing or you're operating in your purpose. There's some price that you have to pay, and in some cases there's something that you're going to have to pay back for your deeds or your time spent. So I love that, man. Maybe I could ask you, I know we're getting close to our time, but I do want to know, this newer formed iteration of the band, what are some of your big goals? I don't mean just I mean, like, the big goals. Tell us some of the, like, really would love to achieve goals.
Lofty goals.
Without even thinking about it being possible or realistic. Or
likely. Okay. Well, so if it's not fastened to any of those things, I think ultimately, dream of mine has been to be able to set up a gig.
Okay.
Let's say, for example, we're playing July 4th. It's a Thursday night at the Horseshoe Tavern, because Dave's bucket list includes playing the Horseshoe. We played some other downtown venues, but I mean, he's always wanted to play the Shoe.
That's cool.
Yeah.
So having the ability to play a show and have a bit of time to ramp up for it, but just have a packed room, you know?
Right.
We're not into, well, if it happens, fantastic. But I mean, stadiums and that sort of thing, I don't think that's in the picture. I think just given the kind of the nuanced aspect of our music, I don't know that it's really that thing. But that would be something as a lofty goal, let's say, for us, is to release. If I can look back as an old geezer and say, I've really done my bit to get my body of work out there into the world, and I don't feel like I held back too much, like then that would be a goal I'd want to achieve. Like just to have it out there, because I don't know if you guys have kids, but when you do, things take on a different meaning as well, just as far as you know, longevity of legacy and the things that, you know, you'd be remembered by. I ain't gonna be remembered for what I do in my job, like my day job. Not gonna happen. There's like he worked at this place and he did a really good job, but I don't give a shit about that. But what the things that really resonate for me, I'm driving in my car and autoplay comes on my band, because yes, every once in a while I'll listen to my band on, right?
Of course.
But they'll start singing along, and that to me that's that currency aspect, right? Is them knowing enough to say, because I have to project it into the future and say, well, when I'm gone, what are the things that they'll focus on and remember me by?
Right.
Yep.
And that, if that's one of them, then I feel like I've met my goal.
That's it.
And
I may not apply to the other guys in the band necessarily, and knowing that I'm sort of speaking for them in this regard, but I think it's something close to that. Is just, you know, being able to reflect and say that we did our best to put the creative aspect of us.
You're right. Okay.
Which is probably a more important reason for why we're on this earth, other than the main one,
the
being,
task.
Your family, your loved ones, and you know, obviously sustaining that.
And
just leaving the world a better place than you found it. But I'd say that's kind of more goals. Doesn't sound lofty, like we want to play the Enormo Dome and have
Yeah.
diamond-studded phone cases and stuff like that. It's just yeah.
But I mean, given the amount of pressure and distractions and just responsibilities in life, I think that is a lofty goal. I think it's a goal that we should all share and
Absolutely.
share out loud more often, actually.
Yeah.
This episode's been great for me because we talked about what we love. That's been the theme of it. We talked about purpose, and I really like what you said because I think overriding almost everything all of your answers, there was something, not only the purpose, but defining who you are and choosing how you define who you are. Thinking ahead that this way that you define who you are and these decisions that you make with your time, with your creativity, is going to one day become your legacy. That's what I kind of got from everything that you said there. So yeah, thank you for that, man. Thank you for joining us on here.
Absolutely.
We definitely want to give you this opportunity to shout out your socials, tell us all where we can find the band, any information on upcoming shows. You and I are definitely going to come. Maybe we'll go maybe if you're around, we could go to the Horseshoe one. But yeah, we'll definitely come check you out. So keep us posted on things happening, and let us know where to find you.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, we're just look up Shoemaker Levee, the name of the band. We're on Facebook, we're on Instagram. We are on TikTok, but just I'm sort of gradually getting into posting on there. Yeah, we got a show coming up July 4th at the Horseshoe, Thursday night, so book the Friday off if you can. Playing with a couple of other great artists,
Nice.
Russ Robson, who they actually run an independent music festival called Gustapalooza, which don't know if you're familiar with that, but it's a great opportunity to run into some independent music. And Harley Olivia, who is a female rock act that's fantastic. She performs Gustapalooza as well, and she's also a vocal teacher, and she teaches my youngest child.
Nice.
There's some connections there. And I'm going to plug the record because that's coming out. First single is going to be dropping mid-June. It's called Hinterlands. Okay. And so, we're very excited about this record because, we have taken a lot of time with this time around to, focus on a place where we're all ultimately proud of the product. And so we hope that resonates and that carries forward in what people are going to hear. So we're excited about that.
That's very
beautiful,
cool.
Man.
And I feel like, D, we should give a quick shout too, because we did connect with Russ from Gustapalooza, and I don't know if I don't have the information on the festival handy, but we'll definitely drop that somewhere. But we do want to give a big shout out to all the work that they're doing, and we will be talking about that particular festival more in upcoming episodes as well.
That's great because they're the real deal. That's the September 13th to the 15th.
Thank you.
Yeah, Gustapalooza. It's in Cookstown, Ontario. Yep, at the Georgian-based Steam Showgrounds, and it's we're as part of that we're doing a seminar series on. Which we should probably talk about because there's educating indie musicians about how to kind of further their craft. So copyright 101, how to, social media aspects. And so there might be, anyway, so yes, fantastic festival. Thank you.
Yeah, we'll have probably an opportunity to meet you there, if not sooner. I actually said that something just, I guess, maybe we'll work on having Russ and maybe yourself and maybe a few others from the festival to represent the festival, maybe closer to the date. So we'll come up with something. We'll get in touch for sure. But yeah, thanks for joining us, man. It's been a great, insightful conversation.
It's my pleasure. Absolutely. And it's been great talking to you both, and great to see hearts in the right place. So yeah, happy to do it. Thank you for having me.
Yeah,
of course, anytime.
Only one way
appreciate you.
And man, share love, spread love, and keep doing your thing, everybody.
You got it.
Not necessarily for you two directly, but in general to everybody.
Fair enough. All right, everyone. Until next time, we'll see you when we see you.
Thanks.